There is a line in one of his songs that most people hear and move on from. In a lamb like I'm Bruce Wayne. 4 words that sound like a flex. Sound like another rapper talking about a car. But when you actually study the life of Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden, the kid who became NBA Youngboy, you realize that line is not a boast. It is a biography. Because this man has lived a life that mirrors Bruce Wayne in ways that go so far beyond the Lamborghini, that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A boy who lost his father before he could really know him. A man who built an empire entirely on his own terms. Someone who moves through 2 completely different worlds at the same time. One that the public sees, and one that he protects with everything he has. A person who has been knocked down by the system repeatedly, faced consequences that would have ended most people, and gotten back up every single time. This is the story of rap's real-life Bruce Wayne, and by the time we are done, that line is going to land completely differently than it did the first time you heard it. To understand why this comparison goes deeper than a car and a costume, you have to start at the beginning. Not the beginning of the music career, the beginning of the man. Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden was born on October 20th, 1999 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And from the very first chapter of his life, the circumstances were arranged against him. His father went to prison before Kentrell could build a real relationship with him. His grandmother stepped in and raised him. And Baton Rouge, the city that shaped him, was not a forgiving environment. It consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in America per capita. High crime rates, deep-rooted poverty, a broken infrastructure that the people living inside it have to navigate every single day. The kind of place where the trajectory of your life can feel like it was decided before you were old enough to have an opinion about it. Now hold that image next to Bruce Wayne. The foundational story of that character, in every version, across every medium, is built entirely on the architecture of loss. A child who witnesses the murder of both his parents in front of him, left standing in Crime Alley with nothing but grief, in a city that seems to want to consume him. The parallel between Bruce Wayne and Kentrell Gaulden is not exact, and it was never going to be. One is a fictional billionaire from Gotham, the other is a real human being from Baton Rouge. But the emotional blueprint is the same. Both of these figures were shaped in their earliest years by an absence that never fully healed, a wound that the world expected to break them, and that instead became the engine of everything they would build. What psychology tells us about men who grow up without a stable father figure is that they tend to either collapse under the weight of that absence or construct their own framework to replace it, their own rules, their own code, their own understanding of what loyalty means, what protection means, what it looks like to show up for the people who depend on you. Youngboy chose the second path, and he chose it before he was old enough to fully understand that a choice was even being made. By the time Kentrell hit his early teens, he had already dropped out of school in the 9th grade, and by 16 years old, he had welcomed his first child into the world, a son named Caden. To the casual observer, those 2 facts might read as cautionary statistics. A dropout with a child before he is old enough to vote. But documentary truth requires you to look at what actually happened next, because the story those facts suggest is not the story that unfolded. At 16, with no father to model fatherhood from, with no formal education, with no financial safety net, and no industry connections, Kentrell Gaulden made a decision. He was going to take care of his son. He was going to build something, and the tool he had was his voice. So he used it. His earliest mixtapes started appearing around 2014 and 2015, and they were raw. They were not polished. They did not sound like product designed for a specific demographic. They sounded like a person actually telling the truth about their life. The texture of it, the fear inside it, the love inside it, the weight of it. And people heard something in those early recordings that they had not heard in a long time. Authenticity, not performed authenticity. The real thing. By 2017 and 2018, he was one of the most discussed young artists in the country. His streaming numbers were climbing in ways that the industry struggled to fully account for. He was not getting the traditional radio play, not getting the late-night television appearances, not moving through the usual channels that the music business uses to manufacture a star. He was building his audience directly, one track at a time, through YouTube and streaming platforms, through sheer volume of output and the gravitational pull of his honesty. And here is where the Bruce Wayne architecture begins to become visible. Because what makes Bruce Wayne legendary is not the costume, it is not even the money. What makes the character endure across decades of storytelling is the infrastructure he builds. Wayne Enterprises is not just a corporation. It is a system that Wayne has designed to serve his mission, whether or not he is in the room. The Batcave is not just a base of operations. It is a facility that represents years of planning and investment and strategic thinking about how to sustain a mission that is larger than any single moment. Bruce Wayne does not just have resources. He has built a machine. Youngboy, without anyone handing him a template, started building the same kind of machine. He founded Never Broke Again, his own label. He brought artists into that label. He built a team around him. He negotiated a deal with Motown Records, but structured it in a way that allowed his own label to exist inside the arrangement rather than being absorbed by it. That is a distinction that matters enormously. An artist signed directly to a major label is an employee of that system. An artist who brings their own label into a deal with a major is a partner in that system, a co-owner with their own infrastructure and their own leverage. Youngboy chose the second structure before most people his age were even thinking about contracts. That is not a rap decision. That is a business decision. That is someone who looked at the music industry and decided that the point was not to get in, the point was to own something once you got there. Bruce Wayne does not work for Gotham. He funds his own operation, maintains his own independence, and answers to no one. Youngboy built a version of that same autonomy in an industry that is specifically designed to extract value from artists rather than allow them to retain it. Now, the legal story cannot be walked around because it is inseparable from the full picture of who this man is and what this comparison actually means. In 2016, Youngboy faced an attempted murder charge. Those charges were later dropped. In 2017, he served time following a conviction for aggravated assault with a firearm. In 2020, he was arrested in Louisiana on drug and weapon charges while shooting a music video. And in 2021, federal firearm charges resulted in house arrest, an ankle monitor on his leg, his movement restricted to a residence in Salt Lake City, Utah, while federal prosecutors built their case and the clock ran. The easy narrative, the lazy one, is to look at that list and see a cautionary tale. A talented person who could not stay out of his own way. But the documentary truth is more complicated and more interesting than that. Because what happened during those years of legal pressure, during the house arrest period, during the period when the walls were closing in, is not what most people expected to happen. He kept working, not quietly, not minimally, relentlessly. In 2022 alone, while under legal pressure with an ankle monitor on, confined to a house, he released 8 full-length projects, 8 in one calendar year. His output during this period is one of the most remarkable creative streaks in modern music history, and it happened while he was legally prohibited from leaving his residence. The catalog he built during that stretch continued generating streaming revenue, continued deepening his connection with his audience, and continued building the financial and cultural infrastructure of his brand. Bruce Wayne has been imprisoned in the comics multiple times across multiple storylines. The Dark Knight has found himself in situations where the system, or a villain who has outmaneuvered him, has taken away his freedom. And what happens in those stories is not collapse. What happens is adaptation. The mission does not stop because the circumstances changed. It evolves to account for the new constraints. Youngboy adapted the same way the house in Utah became the studio. The restriction became the discipline. The ankle monitor became, in a strange and almost poetic way, the thing that kept him still long enough to do some of the most important personal work of his life. Because this is where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming, and that changes the entire texture of the Bruce Wayne comparison. During his time under house arrest in Utah, LDS missionaries knocked on his door. He turned them away the first time. When they returned, he let them in. And what he said about that moment in an interview with Billboard is one of the most honest things a public figure at his level has said in a long time. He said he wanted help very badly. He said he needed a friend. He said that when these missionaries showed up with no business angle, no agenda tied to his fame or his money, just their faith and their time, it hit him in a way he was not prepared for. He began meeting with them daily. He began studying the Book of Mormon. He opened the music video with a verse from the scripture, specifically from Alma chapter 36, a passage about crying out for mercy from the depths of bitterness and chains. He told Billboard that he was planning to be baptized and was waiting for his ankle monitor to be removed before taking that step. Now hold that next to Bruce Wayne's code, the absolute refusal to kill. The one rule he will not break regardless of circumstances, regardless of the enemy in front of him, regardless of what it costs him to hold that line. That code is not legal. It is not strategic in any conventional sense. In many of the stories that feature it, maintaining that code actually makes Batman's mission harder, but it is the line he will not cross, and it is the thing that defines him more than the suit, more than the money, more than anything else. It is the moral architecture of the character. Youngboy, in a house in Utah with a federal ankle monitor on his leg, found his moral architecture. He found it in the Book of Mormon and in the company of two missionaries who showed up at the right time. And he did what Bruce Wayne does. He built it into himself. He made it part of the structure. He also said something in an interview during this period that deserves to be examined closely. He said the music is therapy, but he cannot stop it when he wants to. He said he tells himself he will wait to release things, and then the compulsion overwhelms him. He called it a disease. And then he said this: the lifestyle is just a big distraction from your real purpose. The lifestyle, a distraction from the real purpose. That is the most Bruce Wayne statement he has ever made without mentioning Bruce Wayne, because that is the entire architecture of the character. The Lamborghini is the distraction. The penthouse is the distraction. The Playboy reputation and the tabloid appearances and the public persona of the wealthy eccentric, all of it is a front. A layer the world gets to see and respond to while the real thing happens somewhere private. Youngboy diagnosed that dynamic in his own life before he was 25 years old. And that level of self-awareness, that understanding of the gap between what people see and what actually matters, is rarer than any of the wealth or the fame. Now let us look at the wealth and the lifestyle itself, because the Bruce Wayne bar requires it. Youngboy has built a catalog that is one of the most impressive and contemporary hip-hop regardless of how you measure it. 4 #1 albums on the Billboard 2, 97 career entries on the Billboard Hot 100. His YouTube presence earned him recognition as one of the platform's top music artists by 2019. His streaming royalties generate passive income across Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube regardless of what is happening in his personal life. And because he controls that output through his own label structure, a meaningful portion of that revenue flows back into his own infrastructure rather than being absorbed entirely by a corporation above him. His real estate activity reflects the same financial instinct. He built a life in Salt Lake City during his house arrest period and listed that property for nearly $6 million in 2024, a figure that represented a gain of approximately $700,000 on the investment in under 2 years. That is not the financial behavior of someone spending money. That is the financial behavior of someone deploying money. There is a difference. One produces a lifestyle, the other produces a foundation. Then there is the touring piece of this, which tells you something important about scale. From the AI Youngboy tour in 2017 to the Until Death Call My Name tour in 2018, through the Still Flexin' Still Steppin' tour in 2020, and up to the Make America Slime Again tour that launched in September of 2025 in Dallas. Live performance has been a consistent and significant revenue stream throughout his career. When the ankle monitor finally came off and the pardon came through, he did not take time off. He went back on the road, because the machine does not rest when the circumstances ease. That is not how you build something that lasts. Wayne Enterprises does not take quarters off. Neither does NBA Youngboy. And then there is the family, which in many ways is the most important dimension of this entire story, and the one that the Bruce Wayne comparison illuminates most clearly. Youngboy has 13 confirmed children as of 2026. He became a father for the first time at 16 and has never treated that role as secondary to anything else he is doing. He features his children in music videos. He speaks about fatherhood directly in interviews. He married Jasmine Michelle in January of 2023, in the middle of the most legally complicated period of his life, and has built a committed family structure with her and their children. He named one of his sons Clemenza, a name drawn directly from The Godfather, which tells you something about how he thinks about loyalty, about legacy, about what it means to build a family that holds together when the outside world applies pressure. Bruce Wayne's family story is built on chosen loyalty rather than blood. Alfred, the various Robins he takes in and trains and protects, the allies who become his people not because of what they share genetically, but because of what they have decided to stand for together. And what defines that family in every version of the story is the ferocity of his commitment to protecting them. He carries things alone so they do not have to carry them. He makes decisions in the dark that the people he loves never see or fully understand, because the burden of the mission is his to hold. Youngboy has spoken about carrying that same kind of weight, about wanting to break cycles, specifically the cycle of paternal absence that defined his own childhood, about making sure that his children grow up knowing their father in a way that he never fully got to know his. That is not a talking point. That is the whole mission underneath the music. And managing a family of this scope, 13 children, multiple households, an enormous public profile, and serious legal complications all operating simultaneously, requires a kind of structural commitment and emotional discipline that most people never have to develop. The legal chapter of this story reached a significant turning point in 2025. After a sentencing in 2024 related to weapons possession, Youngboy was released to home confinement in March of 2025. And not long after that, President Trump issued a pardon that lifted his probation conditions entirely. A child raised by his grandmother in Baton Rouge, with a father behind prison walls, navigated one of the most aggressive federal legal situations of any artist in his generation, and came out the other side of it with a presidential pardon. The system tried to contain him in multiple chapters of his story. It did not succeed in ending what he was building. And when the legal weight lifted, he did exactly what Bruce Wayne does when Gotham finally gives him a moment to breathe. He went back to work. So here is what the full picture actually shows us. When you lay all of it out and look at it honestly, NBA Youngboy has built, without a blueprint, without inherited wealth, without industry connections, without the kind of structural advantages that the music business typically rewards, something that operates the way Bruce Wayne's operation operates. It generates on its own. It has real infrastructure at its foundation. It is guided by a code that was constructed through lived experience rather than handed down from anyone. It is protected by a loyalty that runs deep in every direction. And it is driven by a man who understands at a level that most public figures never articulate so clearly that the things the world can see are not the things that actually matter. Bruce Wayne is not a compelling character because he is wealthy. There are wealthy characters in every story ever told. He is compelling because he made a decision. A singular, costly, defining decision to take the worst thing that ever happened to him and turn it into something. To build a purpose out of a wound. To become, through discipline and obsession and an unbreakable commitment to the people and the place he loves, something that the city he grew up in needed, even when that city did not fully understand or appreciate what he was doing. NBA Youngboy made that same decision. He made it in Baton Rouge. He made it in courtrooms in Louisiana. He made it in a house in Utah with a federal ankle monitor on his leg and 2 missionaries sitting across from him with a book he had never read. He made it in a recording studio somewhere in the middle of the night when the compulsion to create would not let him sleep. He made it in the delivery room and at the altar and in every interview where he spoke about his children and what he wants for them. He made it in the bar, in a lamb like I'm Bruce Wayne. That line did not come from nowhere. It came from a man who somewhere in the middle of everything he was living through looked at his own story and recognized what it actually was. Not a rap career, not a legal record, not a net worth figure that changes depending on which publication you read. A story. One of the most genuinely remarkable stories in modern American music. A story about a kid who had every reason to become a statistic and instead became an institution. Who moved through 2 worlds simultaneously. Who protected what mattered most. Who found his code when the walls were closing in. Who built his empire when the odds said he should not have been able to build anything at all. That is Bruce Wayne. And that is NBA Youngboy. Now there is one more layer to this story that does not get talked about enough, and it is the layer that makes the Bruce Wayne comparison feel almost inevitable when you finally see it. Bruce Wayne operates in a city that does not fully trust him. Gotham has its skeptics, its police commissioners who want him arrested, its citizens who debate whether a vigilante in a bat costume is a solution or a symptom. Even among the people who acknowledge that what he does helps, there is a persistent discomfort with how he does it. He is too powerful, too unaccountable, too far outside the normal structures that society uses to organize itself. And he lives with that tension every single day. He does not get to be universally celebrated. He does not get to be simple. Youngboy lives in the same tension. He is one of the most commercially successful young artists of his generation. 4 #1 albums, billions of streams, a fan base that is genuinely devoted to him in a way that is rare in any era of music. And yet, the conversation around him is always complicated. The legal history sits alongside the artistic legacy. The personal life generates as many headlines as the music. People who have never listened to one of his songs have opinions about who he is and what he represents. He is never allowed to be simple either. And here's the thing about that tension that both Bruce Wayne and NBA Youngboy seem to understand at a level that most people around them do not. The tension is not a problem to be solved. It is the condition of the work. You cannot be the thing that Gotham actually needs and also be the thing that Gotham finds comfortable. You cannot build something real out of circumstances that were designed to produce nothing and also be easy for the outside world to categorize. The complexity is not incidental. It is the whole point. Youngboy has never tried to simplify himself for public consumption. He has never released a statement or given an interview designed to rehabilitate a narrative. He has not adopted a cleaner image or a safer public persona when the legal pressure was at its highest. He just kept being exactly what he is: complicated, prolific, loyal, searching, driven, and let the work speak in whatever language it needed to. That is what Bruce Wayne does. Not the image management, not the press strategy, just the mission carried out with everything he has, regardless of whether the city looking up at the sky approves of the shape of the signal. The music itself is another dimension of this that deserves examination. Because Youngboy does not write songs that describe a life he wishes he had. He writes songs that document the life he is actually living in real time with the kind of emotional transparency that most artists spend their careers carefully avoiding. When he talks about pain in his music, it is because the pain is there. When he talks about loyalty, it is because loyalty is the organizing principle of how he moves. When he talks about his children, it is because they are the reason the whole enterprise exists. Batman keeps a journal. He documents everything: his investigations, his failures, his growth, his grief. It is one of the character details that humanizes him. The Dark Knight sitting alone in the Batcave in the early hours of the morning, writing down what happened and what he learned from it. Youngboy does the same thing. He just does it on a track and releases it for the world to hear. His discography is a running documentary of a life in progress. You can trace the evolution of who he is, from the raw teenage hunger of the early mixtapes to the spiritual searching of the Utah period, to the hard-won steadiness of a man who has survived things that should have stopped him and is still here, still working, still building. That body of work and what it represents about the relationship between art and autobiography is part of why his audience connects with him the way they do. They are not just listening to music. They are watching a life unfold in public. They are watching someone figure it out in real time and put all of it on record. That is an act of extraordinary courage, even when it does not look like courage from the outside. Bruce Wayne chose to carry Gotham's weight so that Gotham's people would not have to. NBA Youngboy chose to carry the weight of his story openly so that the people listening would know they were not alone in theirs. Both of them took a burden that broke them first and turned it into the reason they keep showing up. And both of them have continued to show up in the dark, in the silence, in the moments when no one was watching and it would have been easier to stop. Because the mission does not end when the circumstances get hard. The mission is what you do when the circumstances are at their hardest. That is the full Bruce Wayne. Not the gala appearances, not the car, not the costume. The fact that the costume goes on when the circumstances are worse. That the mission continues not because everything is going well, but because it has to. Because the alternative is letting the darkness win, and that is the one thing that is never on the table. For NBA Youngboy, the ankle monitor was the darkness trying to win. The absence of a father, the streets of Baton Rouge, the courtrooms, the system that processes people like him with a particular efficiency. All of it was the darkness trying to win. And every album released while confined to a house, every child brought into the world and committed to, every scripture quoted in a music video, every missionary let in through the front door, every tour launched the moment the legal weight lifted, all of it was the answer. The same answer Bruce Wayne gives every night when he goes out into Gotham. Not yet. Not tonight. The mission is not done. In a lamb like I'm Bruce Wayne. He said it because he knew it was true. Because somewhere in the building of his life, in the grief, in the grind, in the grace of finding faith in an unexpected place, Kentrell Gaulden became exactly what the bar described. Not a character, not a costume, the real thing. A man who turned the worst parts of his story into the engine of everything he built, and who is still building. That is who NBA Youngboy is. That is why the comparison holds. And that is why when you hear that line again, it will not sound like a flex. It will sound like a man telling you the most accurate thing about himself that he knows how to say.